Was the British Empire truly driven by unquenchable greed and a lust for power? Or is that merely the simplified tale we repeat today? Few academics dare to defend the empire's legacy, yet Oxford professor Nigel Biggar chose precisely that path. When he praised Bruce Gilley's essay The Case for Colonization, academic outrage erupted. All hell broke loose. But Biggar did not retreat. Instead, he launched the Ethics and Empire Research Center, determined to probe the moral ledger of imperialism, weighing its rights as well as its wrongs. His boldest work, Colonialism, A Moral Reckoning, underwent rigorous peer review, only to be withdrawn at the last moment by Bloomsbury Publishing, who declared that public feeling was not favorable. It was not rejected for poor scholarship, but out of fear of backlash. As historian Niall Ferguson observed, those who so quickly condemn the Victorians may never dare to open such a book, though perhaps they should. The question of motives. At the heart of Biggar's work lies a single question. Was the British Empire driven primarily by greed and domination? Critics of empire often speak of a colonial project, a single, monolithic plan for conquest and exploitation. Yet Biggar argues no such essence existed. The empire was never born from one blueprint. Its roots were tangled and diverse. Wessex expanded not to conquer but to defend against Danish and Welsh raiders. North America was settled partly as a Protestant bulwark against Catholic Spain, and English privateers sought fortune in raiding Spanish ports long before any government dreamed of global rule. Ironically, much of what we now call imperial expansion began as acts of self-defense, colonization not as a sword, but as a shield. Commerce, adventure, and the East India Company? The motives were simpler still. Trade, opportunity, and a thrill of distant adventure. Consider John Malcolm, the 13th child of a bankrupt Scottish farmer. Forced to leave home at 12, he joined the East India Company a year later. He fought in campaigns, mastered Persian, wrote histories, and rose to become governor of Bombay. Malcolm was not a plunderer but a survivor, seeking a life beyond poverty. Many officials of the company shared this path. They immersed themselves in Indian languages and culture, even reviving Sanskrit, while believing that a sudden British withdrawal would plunge the subcontinent into chaos. Indeed, the company's rise was often built upon alliances rather than conquest. Indian rulers, mistrusting their rivals, ceded land and power willingly, and many elites preferred British arbitration over indigenous alternatives. As historian Tirthankar Roy notes, to cast the empire simply as a battle of good and evil may make for stirring melodrama, but it is bad history. Empire in Africa. On the African continent, motives intertwined in equally complex ways. After abolishing slavery at home, Britain turned outward to suppress the trade abroad, seizing ports, patrolling coasts, and disrupting inland trafficking routes. Yet abolition was only part of the story. Britain sought also to contain militant Islam, to quell destructive tribal wars, to prevent European rivalries from spiraling into global conflict, and to safeguard fragile investments in places like Egypt. Here, too, empire was often less about conquest than about intervention, stability, and protection of interests both moral and financial. The Middle East and beyond. The Middle East offers another revealing example. Britain entered Mesopotamia and Palestine not from a grand design but through war with the Ottoman Empire. After 1918, it assumed the role of overseer, tasked with rebuilding Arab states and protecting minorities at the request of the international community. King Faisal himself implored Britain to remain, fearing chaos if they withdrew. Even leaders like Churchill and Asquith admitted Britain had little strategic interest in Iraq, yet local rulers believed their departure would bring disaster. Beyond this, Britain increasingly saw its colonies not as possessions to be held forever, but as partners in self-government. The American Revolution had taught a painful lesson, and in time, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa became dominions, self-ruling nations within a wider imperial framework. Conclusion: no single motive. So, was the British Empire driven by power and greed? Bigger concludes that no single set of motives ever defined it. The empire was shaped by countless individuals, traders, missionaries, soldiers, entrepreneurs, and statesmen, each with their own aspirations. Their motives ranged from escaping poverty, seeking security, and chasing adventure, to preserving prestige, spreading faith, and even establishing stable self-government. None of these aims, in themselves, were morally corrupt. Some were even admirable, yet they were often twisted by corruption, violence, and human failing. To speak of empire only as a story of exploitation is to miss its complexity, for history is rarely reducible to absolutes. The British Empire was not merely an empire of greed and power. It was a vast, contradictory enterprise, born from fear and ambition, commerce and conscience, and the restless human desire to shape the world.